Next month's meetings at the UN General Assembly sparking outrage for obvious reasons. Last week, Libyans cheered the return of the Lockerbie bomber, the terrorist released from a Scottish prison on what they called compassionate grounds. They say he's dying of prostate cancer. Some 30 folks had applied for that type of a release. Around 20 of them had received it. He was one of them. Family members of the victims of Lockerbie furious to see Khadaffi greeting Abdel al-Megrahi, the terrorist. In fact, many relatives suspect Khadaffi himself gave the order to blow up the flight over Lockerbie, Scotland in '88, and al-Megrahi was one of his operatives. As part of his visit next month, Khadaffi coming to the U.S., he wants to stay at the home of a Libyan diplomat who lives in suburban New Jersey. And that adding insult to injury for some of the victims' families who live nearby. Efforts, of course, underway to severely restrict Khadaffi's movement during his visit. But will it work? We are joined by the mayor of Englewood, New Jersey, a man who also happens to be a former federal prosecutor and a 20-year immigration lawyer, Michael Wilds. Mr. Mayor, welcome. Nice to see you. Very good. Let's talk, if we can, about what we're working with. The UN itself is sovereign territory. The embassies themselves around the city and around the world are sovereign territories. We can't do that much to prevent a foreign leader from being in those sovereign areas, correct?
Well, in this studio, let's pull the lens back on the whole landscape. The truth be told is that American consular officials, the immigration authorities, and the State Department could actually restrict a visa, not issue a visa, or give a restrictive visa saying that a person's confined to a certain territory. If this man agreed or admitted that he had something to do with Lockerbie, he wrote a check with $2.7 billion to the families, and we need his oil and we have to do business, fine, let him have a video feed. Let him actually come into the UN compound, stay there, and fly out.
And but again, just to interrupt, remember, he has the largest oil reserves in Africa, Gulf of Sidra. that's the political football.
That's what we're bartering for, but I just don't want to barter our souls, because truth be told, this father, this American, this Jewish American, is offended that he may actually sleep in my city limits. I don't want him on U.S. soil, nor do I want him sleeping in my town.
But what recourse, again, particularly with the benefit of your work as a federal prosecutor and immigration attorney, in addition to now being the mayor in Englewood, what recourse do you have to prevent this man from leaving UN grounds, from going to stay with a Libyan friend in Englewood?
If the Immigration and State Department authorities issue him a visa, and it's an unrestricted visa, and he's allowed to stay in wherever he wants to stay, he can stay in the property that they own. Mind you, they own this property for the last 3 decades, haven't put a dime into it, and in recent 2 months have put millions of dollars into it. We've issued a stop order just yesterday asking them to stop all work on site because they're violating code ordinances. They took a rabbi's fence and his trees down without permission.
Did you or have you or anybody else made efforts with U.S. immigration to not allow the issuance of an unrestricted visa?
The congressman who is sitting in the district sat and worked very hard as mayor of this city back in the day to make this happen. They are working strenuously now because this home was to only be used by the ambassador for weekends and for soirees, but it wasn't to be used by Khadaffi per se. If they allow this to be done...
Who's they?
If the State Department, if the immigration officials, if he's coming, and we have to deal with the inevitability of the fact that he may actually be coming, we then have to make sure that we deal with this properly. It's going to cost my police officers, it's going to cost the taxpayers, because they are not going to pay a nickel, nor have they paid a nickel in the last 3 decades, $20,000 per day to protect him and the residents.
But your only recourse is to file for a restricted visa at the State Department, which at this point
I can't file for any visas. My only recourse is to say thank you. I'm a Democrat, Mr. Obama. I'm upset that this is happening. You should not be allowing this person to sleep next door to a distinguished rabbi in an Orthodox Jewish community, and an African American, and a white and a Latino community, where we do not want people who are progenitors or financiers of terrorism. His son and he gave a hero's welcome a few days ago. What more do you need? Is this the intermission on the war on terrorism? Is this where we go get our popcorn and our sodas and we come back and we stop having a laugh? We have to keep the cadence of this. And you know, my colleague, Mayor Bloomberg in New York, denied his request in Central Park. Mayor Giuliani, his predecessor, actually sat in protest by standing when Yasser Arafat came to New York to a performing arts center, and he wouldn't give him the time of the day. He saw him for who he was, a terrorist. This man had 280 souls, 38 of who lived in New Jersey, killed. And because he writes a check, because we need his oil, we're going to give him the right to put up a tent. He wants to put a Bedouin tent up in our community.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any plans for any kind of formal protest in case Khadaffi is in your city limits?
Absolutely.
What are you going to do?
We have a protest slated next door for this Sunday at 11 a.m. Again, we do not have to like this. We do not want this. And we will, Democrats, Republicans, Muslims, Christians, Jews, whites, blacks, everything, we will be standing in solidarity. The truth is, these 38 souls, and that's the one permit I'd like to see somebody actually request, not just a Bedouin tent. I'd like to hear the 38 names mentioned on a loudspeaker while he's sleeping. That's what he should be hearing.
Is there any doubt in your mind that whether it was the release of the Lockerbie bomber on so-called compassionate grounds or the accommodations to Khadaffi and the diplomatic efforts over the past few years are explicitly a subordination of our morals and values in the name of oil?
We're bartering our souls for oil. There's no difference. You know, Idi Amin, who was a dictator and a despot, lived 20 years after he retired in Saudi Arabia and was given a state funeral. What message are we sending here? We did this with the Mujahideen, with Osama bin Laden. This is, again, the progenitor of all this. He predates this. Remember when France wouldn't allow us over their airspace when President Reagan sent those fighters and we lost a pilot because of that? Well, you know, the friendships that we're making now, we're going to have to deal not only collaterally in the future, but we're also sending the wrong message to the new leaders, the students that are studying, the new congressmen, the new mayors, my children, your children, all children, that this is how you deal with terrorists. What do? You give them carte blanche, you let them build whatever they want, the hell with everything else, and we don't have to pay the bills.
Only if they have oil. Otherwise, we'll put them in jail.
Until we don't need oil, we're going to barter our soul. And I have to tell you, this is not a Democrat-Republican issue.
Clearly.
This is an American issue.
I could not agree with you more, and I appreciate you spending a little time talking with us about it this morning.
Check out my website, michaelwilds.com. We'll keep information posted. Call your senator, call your congressman, call your president. I don't want him on your soil. I don't want him sleeping in my city.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're plugging into politics next at the morning meeting. Rush Limbaugh at it once again, patting himself on the back for a prediction he made on the timing of Ted Kennedy's death.
You see, it's not just telling people Geico could save them hundreds on car insurance. It's actually doing it. Businessmen say hard work equals success. Well, you're looking at arguably the world's most successful business gecko. First rule of business, hard work equals success. That's why Geico is consistently rated excellent or better in terms of financial strength. Second rule, don't steal a co-worker's egg salad, especially if it's marked a gecko. Come on, people.
Carol, when you replaced Casual Friday with Nordic Tuesday, was it really for fun or to save money on heat?
Why don't you think Nordic Tuesday's fun?